Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on what time zone you're in. We're so excited for you to be here today. This is our customer-driven innovation presentation. Bring strategy to life while focusing on work that really matters. Today's presentation will be led by Mr. Randy Clark. He is the Director of Solution Consulting here at Upland Software, and we'll be specifically focusing on our power steering product line today. Please make sure you put any questions you have in the box, and we will take all questions at the end. After a brief presentation and a demonstration, we will open up the floor to some questions. I will read them, and then Randy will provide an answer. So without further ado, Randy, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Molly. Good afternoon or morning to everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Randy Clark. My background, I've been with the company now 11 years with power steering. I actually come at this from a user point of view. I bought power steering and used it when I ran a PMO at Pitney Bowes, about 50 project managers, and I went out and did a search of the marketplace and ended up buying power steering and used it for a number of years there at Pitney Bowes before joining the company. So that's my background. Molly said, hey, listen, try to say something interesting about yourself. I don't have a whole lot of that, but I thought I'd share with you one interesting bit of trivia, that my dad was an NFL football player and coach. So I grew up in and around the NFL. That's me up there on my dad's shoulders. He was a player with the Cleveland Browns. You can see he blocked for Jim Brown, Leroy Kelly, both in the Hall of Fame. He was a coach with the Dolphins in the 70s, where he won 2 Super Bowls with the Dolphins, and then later was the 49ers and head coach of the Lions as well. So I've had an interesting background moving around the world. It's almost like being in the U.S. military, where you move every so often when you're involved with the NFL like that. So that's a little bit personal background. But what are we here to talk to and about today? A little bit about Upland and who Upland and what our mission is to revolutionize the way we plan, manage, and execute work, and all the elements around from strategy, understanding the linkage to that strategy, to executing work, to collaborating, planning that work, and rolling up and understanding and reporting on the work that you've done. And what we'll look at today is specifically power steering and the relationship that we've got with some of our key clients. And here's just a sampling. I think you'll recognize a number of these clients. Global in nature, large organizations, down to small organizations as well. But what we've done is created connections with these organizations to work with them to understand their needs, to understand the voice of the customer, and to build it into our tool. And that's sort of one of the stories around today, is that one of our clients using power steering came to us with this advanced workflow need, and we worked with that client to ensure and build into the tool that functionality. And what we basically did, and when we look at the Upland family of products, from IT financial management through portfolio management, where power steering is, project and collaboration, service automation, web content, mobile engagement, lots of different functions, all basically with capabilities through the web and cloud, which makes it common to the Upland platform. But what we did is we really worked and took 2 tools, power steering and FileBound. And FileBound being a document and workflow automation tool, and leverage that relationship with our sister clients or products to infuse and pull that functionality into power steering to meet the needs of the client. We continue to look for opportunities across products to leverage the unique capabilities and expertise of our sister companies as we go forward as well. And so that's sort of the background and overview of where we came from. We're going to talk a little bit about what Workflow Manager is. And basically, it's a way of routing action items based on specific triggers and elements that are in the tool. So the tool, once you fill out the forms or fill in certain dollar amounts or which department and region this is in, decides based on that input to route work to create the right work to the right individuals and then to follow that workflow. Now, one of the things we're going to do here is jump in and look a little bit at traditional power steering products. So I'm going to log in here to Power Steering as a site and look at really quickly some of the capability and things around, if you haven't seen Power Steering before, what this is all about. When I log into Power Steering, which is a web-based application, get to it on the web, I'm using IE here, and it takes me to my home page, which is an aggregate view of what's going on in my portfolio of projects. What am I spending to cost, to plan? Where and which groups are those spending in? What's my pipeline of projects look like? And I can drill down into things like my roadmap. So here I'm looking at that chart and I want to drill into it. And I find out more about those projects that are in my portfolio. Here's a list of my active projects and the time frames and the status of those projects. So I get a nice view of where I'm executing my projects, what's happening along the way here. And if I want to know more about any given project, I can drill into that project. So I click on that one project, and it's going to take me to the project view. Now, at this point, what we've done is drilled down to the page in Power Steering where projects are managed, where work is managed. What you'll see is that this is a summary page, right, for this SAP implementation project. And what you'll note is that it uses a phase gate template. Now, Power Steering supports workflow through approvals of documents and phases to ensure that the right people have approved through phases to ensure the governance is taking place that you've designed. Those phases and gates are all configurable depending on your workflows. It can be, as simple as 2 or 3 phases up to 15 phases and gates that need approval. Now, when we were working with our client on around their needs and workflow, they were looking at specific CapEx approval workflows, where they had $1 million CapEx requirements or $10 million or $20 or $50 million CapEx approval requests. And they're using Power Steering to approve that request through levels and gates. Right? And our traditional phase-gated template didn't have the capability needed to route and make decisions based on the size, based on the the group that was the tool was or the project was in, the request. And so this is where we started working with FileBound to find a solution and create that into Power Steering to meet those needs. Right? So that's sort of a background of oops, sorry, go back to my slides here. Power Steering Workflow Manager group. And let's go in a little deeper into what this Workflow Manager is, and then we'll go in and look at it in action in a configured site. Right? So lots of different capabilities here with parallel routing, where what we saw before were phase gates that were more linear, right? The scoping phase, the execution phase, the close phase, where these are parallel routing. Things can happen all at once, multiple directions based on certain conditions. We have single or multiple approvals needed. The ability to do conditional routing. So if you're setting for an approval to an individual and that person doesn't respond within 5 days, well, then it escalates to the next person on the workflow. Conditional assignments, email notifications, all following this, so everyone receives an email through their Outlook, Lotus Notes, whatever email client they use, Gmail, that says they've received an action item from Power Steering's Workflow Manager. They can follow that link and go to see what it is they need to do to approve or move that project up. So lots of different capabilities there, and the benefit really is that clients are able to now standardize and control specific workflows based on specific criteria and build as many of those different workflows for different types as needed. For instance, the client that we're looking at, the CapEx request, the $1 million CapEx request is very much different than the $50 million request. It ends up going to the board of directors. It ends up going very, very high based on the dollar amounts and the conditions. Okay. So we'll go a little bit further and look at some of those work cases. So we've talked about project approvals, right? Applying this to approval workflows in terms of investments, in terms of projects, and simplifying those templates so that it's all predefined. We know who the individuals are and who gets notified when. Also used in change management. So IT projects, big, large-scale work projects. I've got a major change. Well, based on the size and scope of that change, workflow manager decides where and who needs to be involved and what types of approvals or checkoffs need to take place. And then finally, simple project checklists. So we want to simplify the completion of any given work. We know there's a series of steps and elements based on certain conditions and sizes. We can lay those out and present to any individual one after the other, sort of here's the progression of work that needs to be done, check it off, go to the next, check it off, etc. So very sort of defined workflow. So let's go through and look at basically how this happens. Right? When we talk about FileBound, our sister product, this is a screenshot capture from a FileBound development of the workflow. And it's drag and drop workflow development, right? So you're saying when we kick off a project, we're at the start phase, and then it moves into the manager review, and at the same time, any question goes down to the PM, etc. So you've seen these types of sort of workflow developers, and this is how, and the interface that's used there. A lot of the key things will be to identify the actual individuals. Right, so one of the things our clients told us is that, well, depending on which region or plant or group or this was in, the request was in, well, it would have a different individual responsible as a plant manager, et cetera, and not everybody knew who those people were. So based on that input to the tool, it knows exactly who the individual is to route to that person. As well as having decision points based on any criteria in the tool. And what we'll note when we get in the demo, if it's higher than a certain amount, then it has to go a different direction, right? So this is what it looks like. Basically, when we look at power steering, we go into the power steering interface and we create a piece of work. As soon as we create that work into power steering, it kicks off the workflow, and action items begin to be created and communication and alerts to those individuals. So simply by creating the work, the workflow is connected to that work in power steering. It kicks off that those steps and action items. This is what basically it looks like here. The workflow manager will bring in an assignment in power steering, the status of which is just starting with no % complete. As that person completes that and moves to the next phase. And as soon as it moves to the next phase, you may have decisions like, hey, I need to cancel this at this point, or send it back to the project manager based on, again, the rules of the workflow, all configured by the client. Okay, so let's go in here and take a look at this in action. So let's go back into power steering, and I'm going to go into a site that has some of the workflow manager configuration set up. Now, if I go in as a project manager, someone who's sort of managing the work, this is my page interface where I'm looking at my 2 active projects that are in the system. I've got this manufacturing control system that needs approval. It's a $2.5 million budget. It's in the operations on a certain plant in a certain region, and I know where we stand in terms of that workflow at this point. To kick this off, how do we do it? Well, Over on the left-hand side, what you'll notice are a number of icons. And that icon here at the top is highlighted. That's my home page. That's how I've configured to see my home page with my dashboard of projects. Next to that is my inbox, where I might have notes, notifications, and alerts telling me that things are due. And then next to that is my add sign. So I'm going to add a project into the tool. So we go into the project. Step one of a 3-step wizard. First step here is, what type of project template are you using? Now, these project templates, this is where the project template is going to be connected to the workflow. So different project templates might have different workflow decisions and routes. Right, so here's this CapEx workflow template, and that's what we've got, the type of project that we're working on. So we're going to select that, and we're going to hit continue. And by the way, every user who creates who has access to Power Steering, when I go in and look at creating a project, you can permission users who can see certain templates. So if there's a certain type of user, I don't want them kicking off a CapEx workflow. It doesn't make any sense for that person to have that authority. We need someone with permission and access to that template to be able to select it. So only those individuals that you decide, right? So here we go to step two, right? In step two, we've got this, new workflow project. Right? I'm going to give it a name, and then we've got some key elements that are configured as decision points for the workflow. For instance, what is the total budget? This amount is used to determine the path of the workflow. So if I come in and I say, well, this is a $3 million project, right? What about the department that it's in, right? It's in operations group. How about the plant? Each one of these decisions is going to tell the workflow who the people are, where it's going, what to do. And then finally, the region of the world. Now, those options are completely configurable. You can have as many different options, or in terms of where it is, what type of project it is, what type of work, what the value of it or the cost of it is. So very, very flexible forms that you can create. And by the way, you can create these forms on your own, very simply adding new fields to this. Right. Finally, we'll continue on to the next phase in step 3, where I can assign any individuals to the project, any contributors or others that I need on the project. We're just going to leave that alone, but basically what you would do is just search in here for the user, take the user and drag them into the role at which they play on this piece of work. In this case, we're just going to leave this alone and go ahead and finish out that piece of work. Okay. I finish that piece of work. Now I'm sitting on the home page for that work, the new project workflow, and automatically we start to generate work tasks. So if I come down to the action items list, let's go back to the one we created a little earlier and look at this manufacturing control system project that we created a little earlier, so that this has got key information already in it. So let's manage this one. So here's this this project, this manufacturing control system request, and we can see that if we open up the details on it, it's a $2.5 million operations are. So these are some of the variables, what our time frame for completion of this work is, over 86 days duration, what my start and end dates are for the schedule of this work. Also includes any documents that need to be filled out. So here's a business case document. That's always attached to the template. When we need to have some types of forms or business tools filled out in this project, those are available right from the template. And here's some of the work we need to do in sort of starting the work actions. Right? So the first step here when we created this thing is those action items will be created. And if I look here, it says we need to prepare the business case. That's my first action item. Right? So as we look at this, the workflow is creating action items and assigning it to certain individuals based on again, the template. And so the first work that needs to be done is to prepare that business case. So I might go back to that document, work through that document, etc. But once we figure, all right, we're complete, we've done that work, right? There's clicking on that action item takes me to the next step. It says the project manager will ensure the budgets and schedules, etc. And then we've got this plant manager approval, which is the next step in the workflow. So from that, I click on the plant manager, and we might, please review and approve. Right? So I put in a little comment around what needs to be done. Off it goes, right? So if we go back to that, those action items, what we'll note now is that there's a new one. This plant department approval is here. If I go into all my action items, let's view all of those. Here's the one that we've prepared the business case. That's completed. We know when it was done, who did it, when it was signed off. Right now, it's been submitted for plant department approval, and it's gone to Brian. Well, what does Brian's interface look like? We can switch over to Brian. Let's go to and log in as if we were Brian by just doing a user switch real quick here. We come over to Brian's homepage, right, and we see that he's got an action item up here in his inbox, and it says that we need plant approval on this thing. Right? So if I click on that plant approval, it's going to take me right to that piece of work. The next steps in that workflow, I might have a question back to the project manager who put the business case together. I might have a modification required to this before I approve it. Or I can go ahead and say, yep, I've reviewed everything and I want to go ahead and approve it. Right? And in this case, that's what we're going to do. Right from here, approval. And we'll say, go forth to next approval on this, save it up. Done. Right? If I go back, let's go back over to the project manager on this project. Oops, sorry. There we go. Right. We can go back into that project and see what's happening next on our workflow. So we go into the action items list. All action items. There's the plan approval completed, and I think that's the end of that workflow for the project that is approved at this point at that plant level due to the size of the project. Okay. So that is a relatively quick overview of the Advanced Workflow Manager. I would open it up for discussions and questions at this point. I think we've got a question here. It said, are the labels in the fields definable that form the selection? And yes, absolutely. So every field in terms of the drop downs, like the department, the plant, the size, you can have fields like the risk level, the priority, the alignment with strategy. How does this align with our strategic objectives? All of those are definable by the client and worked into the workflow to make decisions based on the selection in Power Steering. Are there other questions? If we type them into the chat line item. Molly, did we get any other questions?
I'm not seeing any others. We'll give everyone a couple more minutes. Yeah, if you do have any questions, please do put them into the chat box. Here's one. Randy, do you have any clients that are using your tool in agile methodology environments?
Yes, we do. Again, based on configuration of the project workflows, it's basically, we see a lot of clients saying, okay, I have a release, I have maybe epics as part of that release, I've got individual pieces of work that need to be executed, they've got sprints involved with story points, and so yes, we can organize that so that you're focused on quick sprints to deliver functionality, to be able to roll that up to a epic view or a release view and see where are we in terms of getting to completing all of the work needed to be done. So it is simply a configuration exercise. Some clients will also integrate with the Jira, where they use Power Steering to understand the status and the overall release dates and functions, and integrate with Jira to manage detailed sprint work or story points, etc. And so that's another option that clients use as well.
Great, thanks, Randy. Another one just popped up. If you use a priority questionnaire for ranking alignment, can the priority totals default to a single view where you can see how much each participant scored the project?
Sure, you can, right? So here, if we, let's go back to this environment here, and let's go look at a project. And when we look at a project in terms of priority, I'm going to go to this update catalog project. What we can do is first off, capture things like the budget, the costs, the expense, the benefit to the organization, and then also capture things like complexity, the value, strategic imperative, things like here, complexity. Is this a small organization, or is this a project that crosses multiple teams and large organizations? Well, if I select that, watch what happens to my probability of success score. It goes down. The variables that you have here in terms of questions and answers and responses, right? And so here's one, the ability to execute. We do this kind of work all the time. Or is this something it's never been seen before in the world? Well, if we do that, our probability of success is going to go down quite a bit. So the questions and the responses are all up to you, and also can be multiple users scoring it at the same time. And when we have, especially clients who use this for new product development, you've got people like, here's what marketing thinks of this. Here's what operations and manufacturing thinks, right? They score it, and then you can take a weighted average on those. Finally, what happens is that I can take a look across all of the projects listed in a dashboard view to stack rank them based on those scores. So if here's all my active projects, and we want to look at this by project prioritization, and I hit go, I can sort it out not by execution of project, but by prioritization, and this is going to redraw my page. Here's all of my projects. Here's priority numbers, the alignment score, the probability of success, and all of those things, again, being calculated based on those responses that you saw earlier, the ROI, etc. And then what we've done is created what we call a measure formula that's looking at those elements and stack ranking all of the projects based on a formula. And that formula is just sitting in the background, and it's very completely configurable. You can look at anything. I want projects that are has high probability of success, that have a high ROI, that have a high priority, and that's my #1 project sitting at the top down to my least important project, right? So stack ranking it in those fashions. Or I could say, listen, I really want to look at this simply based on ROI. We'll click on the ROI field, and it's going to resort my dashboard from my highest ROI to my lowest. Right? So lots of different ways of stack ranking work. A lot of clients using Power Steerings for intake of possible work opportunities, scoring, prioritization, alignment with strategy, ensure this is the right work we should be working on before executing and approving that work.
Great. Thanks, Randy. Another question just popped up. Could we link the workflow to issues and risks for high impact items?
Absolutely. Yes. So if you're looking at right, the rules in the workflow manager are simply looking at it and say, okay, well, look at the impact of these projects or the risk level. And that simple indicator, is this a high risk project? Yes, it is. And if there are any issues or risks associated with that high risk project or high impact project, well then we want to escalate that to a certain individual for review. Again, the scenarios are unending in terms of what types of scenarios and types of events might trigger certain types of actions.
Great. That's all the questions in the queue right now. Be sure if you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the questions box. We'll get those answered. Great questions so far.
I guess I went faster than I was supposed to. We got done pretty quick.
Okay, everyone will have a little time back. Everyone's busy.
Yep.
I think that's all the questions we have, but everyone will receive an email with the recorded webinar as well as the slide deck, PDFs of the slide deck. So please keep an eye out for that, and please email us or call us if you have any other questions. We're here to help. Thank you so much, Randy, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Molly, and thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a nice week. And good luck.
Bye all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.